Thank you everyone for joining us today at the London Office of Technology and Innovation, or LOTI, at our webinar on hybrid technologies for inclusive workplaces. I'll do a quick bit of housekeeping at the start. So this webinar is being recorded. We will try and share this on our YouTube channel at the end of the event, and I'll be writing up a blog reflecting on the main points of discussion from today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the chat. You're welcome now to introduce yourself in the chat. Who are you? Where are you coming from? Why are you interested in the topic today? And hopefully we can also get some good conversation going there. Quickly, so who are LOTI? LOTI, for those who don't know us, we're a pan-London local government organisation, member-driven, and we help to facilitate collaboration and innovation in digital and data in our members in London. A quick map of who our members are. We're always open to members joining us, so if you're joining us from one of the councils who's not in the map, please have a word with your relevant digital and finance teams. It's a very good offering that we have in LOTI. We've got some fantastic projects, of which this is part of one on the future of work. So the agenda for the day, this introduction constitutes the first bit. We've got some fantastic speakers. We're going to ask them first and give them 5 minutes to present on how their organisation is developing or implementing solutions to make the future of work more accessible and inclusive. Then there'll be sort of 10 minutes, hopefully, of discussion, some questions from myself to them based off the things that they've said and some of the ideas that have come up in our own research. And then it's your opportunity as an audience of mostly local government people working in digital transformation, in HR, in organizational development. It's your chance to ask our fantastic panel of speakers the questions on your mind about what the future of work might look like and what role some of these digital technologies are going to be playing in that future. So a brief overview of the work that we've been doing at LOTI on this. Since I arrived at LOTI in September of last year, my first project that I've been working on is the future workplace. What we've done, as of today, we've published our 6th and final guide, the future of workplace. These guides have basically they're written on topics that emerge from my conversations and my research with boroughs and with expert organisations and external academics and other people who are really insightful on what the future of work might look like. We identified different pain points where LOTI could help develop some practical steps, and as well as some more innovative ideas for how different local boroughs might approach the future of work. What are some things they could be doing now, and what are some things they could be doing for the more long-term development of their organisation? That's the initial step. At the end of this webinar, you'll hear a little bit more about our next steps, but in the context of those guides, we're delighted to be putting on this webinar with some fantastic speakers focusing on the topics of, in particular, on inclusion, and with the LOTI hat on, what the role of hybrid technologies will be in facilitating a potentially more inclusive future workplace. So our speakers today, we have Sean Rintel, who's the principal researcher at Microsoft, Adanna Igbokwe from Zoom, who is a solutions engineer. We have Florian Opitz, a customer engineer at Google Cloud. Hopefully, I haven't seen the chat, but hopefully we'll have Suzanne Semedo, who's head of culture, diversity and wellbeing at Ofcom. And then Luke Marshall-Waterfield, who's the deputy chief digital officer at the GLA. As I said, this is a really, really awesome panel of people. In particular, you know, we've got the people on one end of the scale who are developing these digital products that are really shaping our hybrid workplaces, who are thinking about what it means to do accessibility and inclusion at the very sort of granular scale, but also how do you embed that in everything you do. And then at the other end, we have the people in the organizations who are thinking, okay, how do we implement these new technologies in our broader, more strategic framework for, you know, transforming our organization and becoming the sort of future organization that we'd like to be. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sean from Microsoft to answer the question, how is your organization, i.e. Microsoft, developing or implementing solutions to make the future work more accessible and inclusive?
Thanks, Sam. Absolutely delighted to be here. I work for Microsoft Research, so I'll start off talking about some concepts from research, some sort of overall principles about things, talk a little bit about our research orgs and different orgs that sort of play into this, and then I promise I'll talk about some practical stuff. And of course, you can always ask about practical stuff later on. But from a research perspective, but also a practical one, since we've all been involved now in both remote and hybrid meetings, is that remote and hybrid work are more or less inherently asymmetrical, which traditionally is a problem, but it doesn't mean that it's an insurmountable problem, nor does it mean that it's necessarily something we should always treat as a problem, right? It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And the way that we like to think about it at MSR is that the key to accessible and inclusive remote and hybrid work is to design for collaboration reasoning. So it's not enough just to engineer some threshold of fidelity to real life, or just to build a blank canvas, or to just build pipes between places and assume that all the collaboration, all the social stuff will just take care of themselves because people can do it. Decades of research into this, the attenuation of social cues and goal cues have shown that basically we need to help teams reason about what they're doing together and who they are together online, because who you are together online, and indeed who you are together remotely versus who you are together hybrid, is different than who you are together in person. And we need to help teams understand that. And we have a deep bench of researchers who've been doing this for ages. There's lots of pioneers here, like Abigail Sellen, my boss and head of the Future of Work team here, and Bill Buxton. There's a dedicated cross-company V team all across Microsoft with product and research people who've been looking at this. We've got labs in China and India and a new one in Africa looking at this sort of across cultural perspective. We've got a great social media collective in New England looking at all sorts of marginalized communities and intersectionality and things like that. We've even got some of those folks who also work in independent non-profit organizations like Dana Boyd running the Data and Society organization, really looking and sort of keeping us honest, to be honest, about ways of including marginalized folks. And we've also got people who are looking at specific ability and inclusivity, and we're very lucky, for example, in this lab to have Cecily Morrison, who just was awarded an MBE last year for her services to the blind and low vision community, looking at how to build more inclusive workplaces for those folks. And we really treat, as a whole, collaboration reasoning as sort of aiming for three sorts of things. You need to help teams be more intentional about their collaboration expectations. And this is both a practice thing and a technology thing, as are all of these. So you need to help teams be more intentional about collaboration expectations. You need to help make the seams between collaboration modes and workflows more intelligible. So not invisible. Seamless means easy, that's great. But seamful in this case could mean making them more understandable, making them more obvious, making them even questionable. That is to say, you can ask about them instead of how does this work? And finally, we really think it's important to help teams experiment with the collaboration that works best for them, with insights into their own patterns of work. You can't just build a one-size-fits-all solution anymore. You have to build something that helps teams figure it out, with their own data for themselves, the things that fit them best. So let me get down to a couple of really practical things that we've noticed that Microsoft is doing. One of them is that because I work on meetings, this is sort of really close to my heart. Instead of just thinking about meetings as individual sort of events that just happen or little silos, of course, that's not the way meetings work. Meetings are part of larger projects. We don't have meetings to have meetings. God, we have meetings because they're part of what we do broadly, right? And that means we've got to make sure that instead of thinking about just meetings, you have to think about a meeting life cycle, right? What happens before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting, and also things like chat. How does that figure before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting? And how can you ensure that that chat is embedded into the larger channels and all the rest of the workflows? And indeed, now that we've got these new sort of really cool loop components, which are live collaboration components, which you can put into chat and into channels and even into meetings themselves, you can actually have a lot more live real-time collaboration and really building a workflow of which meetings are just a part rather than something you have to sort of just think about as one thing. Secondly, something that came out of our lab actually here in Cambridge is this idea of companion experiences in meetings. And that's where you can, for example, really easily use your phone as well as your laptop in a meeting. So if you need to quickly ad hoc share a whiteboard like the one behind me, and I don't have a dedicated whiteboard camera, or if I want to share a picture from my phone, you can actually, in fact, you can do this right now. Well, maybe not right now, but you could do this after this call. You can join the Teams meeting on your phone, click a banner that says join this meeting on here as a companion, and then share in video from your phone or share in photos from your phone. You could even remote control a PowerPoint presentation from your phone while you're looking at all the people on the screen here. So there's a couple of really practical things, both stuff that's coming, stuff you can do right now.
Thank you very much, Sean. That's really awesome, and really awesome timekeeping as well. I mean, that's bang on 5 minutes. That's something for me to aspire towards, at least. Next, I'm delighted to have Adanna Igbokwe from Zoom. Adanna, the same question to you. How is Zoom working to make the future of work more accessible and inclusive?
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, really delighted to be here, actually. I just want to start with a quote from my CEO, Eric Yuan. He says, "No vision for a sustainable organization can be realized without creating a culture of trust. Our workforce and customers are in constant motion, working across apps, devices, and locations. So the solutions we pick need to be able to flex to support them wherever they are, while providing constant levels of security and privacy without getting in the way of actual productivity." So in short, we say Zoom is for everyone. Accessibility is at the heart of what we do. So this means Zoom offers communication without barriers. We're putting our users front and center and driving inclusivity for everyone. Here at Zoom, we're listening to our customers and constantly looking for ways to build the very best, most accessible communications experience. So therefore, inclusion is at the core of our design. You know, we offer capabilities for all. Whether you're a free or a paid user, we have options for you. And we provide real-time interaction that's not just a nice to have. For example, there's that live transcription to ensure that no one falls behind in the conversation. And we're also maintaining dialogue with the accessibility community. We're listening to feedback and considering users with diverse input modalities. So this is when we're building and testing our products, constantly collaborating with the product engineering teams at Zoom during every stage of that design process. So with our accessibility solutions today, Zoom uses a number of industry-leading features to ensure all users have an equal experience. You know, users can customize the font size of chat and closed captions with accessibility settings. I'm sure that wasn't a question for me. We can use keyboard accessibility to control your Zoom experience with keyboard shortcuts for easy navigation. Screen reader support. If you use Zoom with a screen reader, focus on what you hear with some granular control over screen reader alerts. We have multi-spotlight and multi-pinning in meeting. Great if the host wants to select the meeting participants they want to prioritize. And also it means that attendees can pin a video for their own custom view. For instance, to ensure a sign language interpreter is always visible. Again, we support high fidelity music mode to optimize Zoom audio for the highest quality. And there's also stereo audio for that better listening experience. You can use your virtual backgrounds to level the playing field for all meeting attendees with the use of blurred and custom backgrounds for increased privacy and meeting focus, and have that managed so that you ensure that the backgrounds that are used, if you choose to, are the same right across the organization. And then we also have recording highlights. Admins and hosts can enable recording highlights. The host can modify the highlighted sections and generate a separate video clip of these sections, so viewers of the recording will see the highlighted section. Looking to that inclusive hybrid future, Zoom's mission is to ensure that people can work from anywhere and connect with people everywhere. This is primarily driven by the innovation in our product, and it results from being built from the ground up. Here at Zoom, we're not trying to retrofit existing video communications. We looked at what organizations need, the use cases, the way they do business, and then we've custom built a video communications platform for those needs today and into the future. So we trust the hybrid approach because the Zoom platform enables it with features like Zoom Room Smart Gallery, designed to create an inclusive experience for both in-person and remote workers. Through a reliable connection, Zoom is helping to foster a mutual sense of trust. And, you know, we think this is critical for teams to do their best work from anywhere. So at Zoom, we're prioritizing multi-language translation capabilities. We hope to support the unique needs of our customers around the globe, especially those who need these services to strengthen international relations. Specifically here, Zoom is breaking down the barriers with live simultaneous AI-based translation across multiple languages for a more frictionless cross-language collaboration communication. Currently, this is being developed through Zoom's recent acquisition of Kites. Okay. My final slide here, I'm going to play this short video just to demonstrate, hopefully, some of the features that I've already spoken about.
Hi, I'm Tom, and I'd like to quickly show you how you can use Zoom meetings and webinars to always keep your interpreter in focus. We have Jenna on the call with me today, and she'll be interpreting for us. As a meeting host, you can use the Spotlight capability to feature different participants in a meeting. Spotlighting changes everyone's view of the meeting to only focus on the participants that you select. And as a meeting participant, you can rearrange the different video streams in the gallery view to customize your layout. And this is great for those scenarios where you want to be able to see everyone, but still keep your interpreter in that top row. And finally, you can always pin a participant in a meeting to customize your own view of the meeting without affecting what everybody else sees. We hope you give these features a try on your next Zoom meeting or webinar.
Okay, that's great.
Hi, I'm Tom, and I'd like to quickly show you.
Sorry. Okay. There we go. Right. Thank you. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Adanna. Really enjoyable presentation, really interesting, and a fantastic overview there of what that might look like in practice, putting all of those features together. Our last speaker from technology company is Florian Opitz, who's joining us from Google. Florian, over to you.
Thank you. I'll start sharing my screen and it should come up. All right. You should be able to see it, right? Okay. All right. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I guess I'm the only non-UK guy here in the room because I'm based in Munich, Germany, working for Google as a customer engineer. So basically, I'm working with customers to implement cloud-based solutions where workspace is a one particular part of. That's my focus for today. But I can start with our mission statement. Google has a mission statement, and that has been there for years. And the mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So it's really part of the mission statement. And I can tell you, we have internal goals which relate to the whole organization. Every one of us has this goal to make things accessible. When we design products, that's a core mission statement that is always part of. I can obviously not give you all the details in what we are doing, but you may know Google is doing a lot of stuff from search to maps to Android to the Chrome browser, Chrome OS, Google Workspace, and many, many more. And it's hard to get the grip on everything, but I can just tell you this site, google.com/accessibility, gives you all the details. What's important there, it's not just a kind of list of products, hey, that's what we do. It's a guidance for developers, how to create software, because obviously we provide platforms like Chrome, like Android, which run software, and this software should be designed with accessibility in mind as well. So it's not just for our own stuff, it's for everyone's applications. On that page, you can also find more information, which is particularly relevant, in my opinion, for public sector organizations. We are designing everything based on the World Wide Web Consortium accessibility guidelines. Actually, we are part of that group, and there is a clear guidance how things shall be structured and what the goals are, that things need to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And we give so-called VPATs, voluntary product accessibility templates, for each and every product that we provide, showing, hey, how do we provide accessibility features in that cases? A general thing that we follow, and that's probably, as you can see, we are talking with the World Wide Web Consortium. Google is doing mainly web applications. So our core pillar to design something is the browser, not only our own browser like Chrome browser, but the other browsers as well. We design it with that target, and that is something that can be seen in our working environment, where we provide solutions for communication, creation of documents and information and collaboration, and sharing and securing all that stuff. Everything that you can see here is built with a browser-first mindset. That makes it quite easy because we are not starting over and over again with the same things. The kind of baseline that we have, that the browser provides, relates to everything. And that's basically something I show best when doing it in a short demo. So obviously, the thing that I was showing to you right now was a presentation in the browser. That is Google Slides. And there are other, other applications. Everything in here is browser-based. So is document creation, Google Docs, for instance. And we have accessibility features. Just let me pull that away. Let me take it that way, just a second. We have accessibility features which relate to everything. Like, we can enable screen reader technology. We can enable high contrast, and it immediately relates to everything. So Google Docs is now with high contrast. Gmail is now with high contrast. The presentation is now with high contrast. And the same is true for the screen reader, which can read out all the features in here and can guide the user. Obviously, it doesn't work that well while I'm talking, but that relates to everything. So we really think kind of from the platform side, and every application just sits on it and inherits basically what we are doing at the platform. So that's what we really think that is inclusive, because it doesn't feel any different if you're creating a doc, if you're having a meeting, if you're writing an email. It's the same stuff. It's always happening and it's working the same way. So basically, that's our take. That's our approach to accessibility, browser first, and bringing the features right to the browser without any add-ons. And basically, as a browser is running more or less everywhere today on any device that you can imagine, it really democratizes the thing because everyone is included. Everyone who owns a device. Of course, we have many more capabilities, like on the Android side, for instance, providing more inclusiveness with added accessibility features like Braille mechanisms to read out things that a smartphone sees, etc. But that goes too far for today. Just wanted to say, browser first. Everything sits on top, inherits the kind of baseline features that we provide, and that's all over. All right.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Florian. It's a really, really interesting demo, that, and it gets my mind wondering, what would it look like for local government if our websites, if our platforms were designed in the same way? Some really interesting, thought-provoking ideas there. Thank you. Next, we're delighted to have Suzanne Semedo, who is joining us from Ofcom. Susan, there you are. Thank you very much for joining us, and over to you for 5 minutes on how Ofcom is building a more inclusive future of work.
Very much so. Thank you very much, and I am delighted to join you today. In terms of Ofcom's work in this area, I'm going to talk mainly from the people's perspective, given the vast amount of tech specialists here. I thought I could lend a different angle in terms of the great work that you're doing. Ofcom's role as the UK regulator for the communications industry is to make communications work for everyone. And so technology and digital transformation is clearly going to be at the heart of what we do. But when thinking about the experience of our employees, accessible and inclusive working has to be an important aspect of making that happen. And we have improvements to our tech spaces, a key part of our D&I strategy, and one of take on more additional powers for online safety. We view the future of work as an important opportunity to more than look at tech changes, but also bring about positive culture change as well. For example, the government restrictions enabled us to have real expedite our ambitions for digital transformation and learn lessons about how technology can support the value of our offices as collaborative areas and the importance of the use of technology within that, how to build an inclusive meeting culture, issues of work-life balance and well-being. As part of that, and particularly as we move towards more hybrid working arrangements, we're conscious that as an organisation that is very much working across sites with offices in Belfast, Cardiff, Edinburgh and Manchester, in addition to London, that we need to ensure that we build an environment where effective use of hybrid technologies is just a matter of course. So one of the key things that we did is to establish a multidisciplinary team to work collectively on embedding that transformation and thinking about the future of work, bringing together HR, colleagues, tech colleagues, communications, in those skilled in employee engagement, all to drive those changes and ensure that actually utilising technology is twinned with that wider message so that our use and our culture changes around intention and actually encouraging inclusive leadership at this time. We can have all the great browsers and things, but actually nothing can replace the role of a really inclusive leader. And I see a lot of smiles here, so hopefully you're all in agreement. So we've done a lot of that work. We are leading our work on this area continues. Our test and learn approach means that we continue to iterate and learn as we expand our programme. And we're due to report on the final lessons learned from this later on in the summer with a view to then putting forward some policy recommendations. So very much it's at the heart of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. Really interesting, and that aligns perfectly with one of the LOTI guides, I might add, on designing hybrid work programs. It's exactly what you've said, so it's great to hear organizations, like Ofcom, who are a bit more mature and leading the way in this space, and we're delighted to have you here. Last but certainly not least, Thanks. We have Luke Marshall-Waterfield, who leads the digital transformation side at the GLA.
All right, so I'm going to race through this so as to give people as much time as possible for questions. Quick potted history of the GLA with 1,400 staff. Before the pandemic, we were pretty much all office based. There were some people who worked remotely as part of flexible working agreements, but the culture and technology did not allow that in a consistent fashion. We were a very, very face-to-face and email-based working culture, and we had already begun changing before the pandemic. So fortuitously, in the months leading up to the pandemic, and I promise we didn't know anything, all staff were given Surface Pros and iPhones as the standard IT kit for the organisation. And what that meant was that overnight we were able to go from being an office-based organisation to an entirely remote organisation when the national lockdown came in, which is very important because we are a Category 1 responder as part of London's resilience, and we were, you know, a key organisation coordinating the response to the pandemic. So the fact that we could just pretty seamlessly switch from being in the office to being at home was a kind of, you know, was remarkable and a testament to the power of technology to support these ways of working. However, we did take the old ways of working to home with us, and I think, you know, everything that Sean said earlier on, it, you know, rang true in terms of the work that we've done since then to think about the future. What we're looking at now is basically how are we going to support people in the organisation to work from anywhere. We've downsized, we've moved into 2 office spaces. On any given day, only half the organisation's in the office and the other half are working from home. And what that means in practice is that everybody is working remotely all of the time. It's very common to go into the office now in Union Street, which has been fairly full, and to see most of the people taking calls and being in meetings at their desks. So everyone's kind of working in this remote way. And we would just, you know, in terms of thinking about how we support this work, the obvious thing to do was to do user research with stuff. So about a year ago, we started to use user research. Alongside that, I read, I think, everything that Microsoft published on this. And we came to some fairly quick conclusions. There was no one-size-fits-all solution, particularly where there were accessibility issues. Empowering localism was going to be a huge tool in solving these problems. So giving team leaders kind of permission to set up their teams in the way that worked for them, not setting like an organisational wide policy of everyone will work in this way and everyone will do things in this way. And we also discovered that there were lots of unquestioned assumptions about organisational culture from when we've been in the office that people were starting to question. So I think a thing that everybody was, you know, a thing that keeps on coming up in conversations is how are we going to bring the T-point culture back? How are we going to bring that sort of, you know, the benefits of collaboration that you get in the office back into work when we're all working remotely? And a lot of people said that culture had excluded them, and that it was an organisation where they felt that if they weren't able to think quickly on their feet in meetings, to approach people they didn't know at tea point or at lunch and so on, then it was harder for them to do their jobs. So one of the things we're thinking about is actually like, how do we cater to a really wide range of kind of, you know, a neurodiverse set of employees and support people to work in lots of different ways. You know, this user research is about a year old, and I'm going to go back and do more of it now, in a few months' time, just to check in with people. We found that lots of people were coming up with their own ways of working, but anecdotally now I'm getting feedback that they quite like a strong steer from the centre in certain areas on on standardising ways of working. I think a lot of that is around the intentionality that Sean talked about at the beginning around what are meetings for, how, you know, what's the most effective way for us to approach a meeting to use all of the tools around it. But in the chat, I have shared the guidance that we published about 8 or 9 months ago, and this was like a toolkit that we gave to managers to help them think about how they were going to set their teams up, and it just outlined 4 core principles, which I shamelessly stole from or kind of adapted from the government digital services design principles when thinking about how to just work in a hybrid way. So make things accessible and inclusive, make things open, do the hard work to make things simple, and in practice that means like think ahead of time about how you're going to run your meeting to make sure it's inclusive and accessible to everybody, and find as many ways as possible as you can to make things human, because a really strong bit of feedback we've got is no matter how much better it was for some people to work remotely and how much more productive people were, there is something about working remotely a lot, or doing long days of video calls, long days of chat, and long days sat in your room on your own, that eventually is quite draining. And people are thinking like, you know, what are the ways in which we can we can find human connection and make that part of work, bring that part of work back in again. There's in the link I've shared in the chat, there's kind of more detail underneath each of the points, but if I go through all of them, I'll run out of time. I think one of the challenges that's come out of this is people have found the limitations of technology quite quickly. We've done recently, I've run a couple of away days. I ran one entirely remotely, and then I ran one in person with the same group of people. So the remote one was just before Christmas when Omicron was on the rise, and the in-person one was last week. For the remote one, we cut it to a half day from a full day because we just didn't think people would have the energy to get through the whole thing do a full day. But everyone was still exhausted by the end of it. And while it was good for sort of bringing out some intellectual exercises, the away day last Thursday that got 40 people in one building together, where we spent a whole day drinking coffee and chatting and doing kind of, just basically like socializing, was incredibly powerful for building team culture and bringing people together. And there is just there is this, I think, insurmountable challenge around connection that we're having to work out how to deal with. But I'm going to stop there.
No, thank you, Luke. I mean, hard to pick out one particular highlight of that because there were so many. I really enjoyed that. So thank you very much for presenting. If anyone in the audience has any questions for our panel, please do put them in the chat. I know I've got many. I could keep asking probably for far longer than we have time, but we'd love to get your questions. And it's really, the purpose of this webinar was to allow people in local government to put questions on this topic to experts who are thinking about this from a variety of different perspectives. But I guess my first question to the panelists, myself, is how does an organization systematically ensure that different marginalized or often ignored voices or people are at the forefront of the future of work? Luke?
I mean, it's to me it's obvious, but it's not. It turns out it's not always obvious. But start with your users and talk to them about what they need. In the GLA, we have a number of staff networks that kind of represent different groups that may be considered marginalised in different ways from the organisation. I'm hearing impaired. I'm part of the disability network. But as part of the user research that I've been doing, we went out and spoke to all of the staff networks. We worked really hard to get a good cross section of employee experience and to really try and understand what was happening to people while we were working from home. So I think it all starts with that and with listening to what, not just, it's not just what people want, but trying to, go deeper and understand what they need. And getting to the solution is really difficult. I think certainly what I learned from the Microsoft research is that from accessibility point of view, there are, one solution will not work for another person. So it's all very well kind of saying that, we've got accessibility tools that can support people to do things, but they don't all work for everybody. So you need to really understand, what your staff need and what your team needs, and kind of tailor your response to that.
Do you mind if I build on
Sure.
Luke's response there? I think what you said is great, Luke. You're right, one size doesn't fit all. And the most important thing you can do really at a practical level is to allow people to have their say about their working conditions. This is really the key thing, is that a lot of expectations are just sort of held to close to one's chest, right? Because of concerns about how you're going to appear if you do these sorts of things. So you have to create a culture of openness. But openness doesn't mean open to everybody all the time. Like full transparency can feel like surveillance. It can feel just as anxious, just creating or anxiety creating as anything else. So you have to say, okay, we need to discuss the ways in which we're going to do this work. We need to discuss the specific needs of, this neurodiverse person or that blind person or that hearing impaired person or these sorts of things. And what it means is that it's incumbent on managers to sort of to take on, instead of more of a task-oriented kind of managerial focus, in this case it's more of a relationally oriented managerial focus. That is by asking around who needs what, and then basically ultimately figuring out some kind of team contract. How do you think you're going to be able to talk about your needs and get agreement on them? Not everything's going to fit everyone for every meeting. Like, you have to agree to that too, right? So in which meetings are specific things going to be needed for specific people, and for which other meetings can we have a different kind of threshold for what's going to be our baseline? And discussing those expectations intentionally instead of letting them simmer under the surface. That's really the key.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, Dana, sorry.
Yeah, hi. I was just going to add to that from a sort of Zoom perspective, and particularly given the question you've asked. If you look at Zoom post-pandemic, we're at 98% of employees today working remotely, and the workforce grew from something like 2,400 to over 6,000 employees from 2020 to present day. So, that in itself is that the Zoom platform provides video, phone, chat, room, and actually an event solution as well. So it's enabling remote teams to successfully work and support their needs. So, from a technology point of view, Zoom has looked at this, and internally we've seen the challenge, and the leadership team have worked very closely with employees, talking to us on a regular basis, open transparency. I think that has been mentioned already. It's critical to ensure that everyone is aligned and in agreement to making sure that hybrid working can be successful and continue to allow the workforce to feel included with decisions that are being made and how they operate as well. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dan. I think next, Susan.
Hello. Yes. Thank you. Such great points raised within this call. Just wanted to build on some once again further. I agree with the importance of empowerment at this time, particularly because of what people have experienced in the last 2 years. The level of restrictions over people's choices about ways of work means that for some employees, they need to be empowered to remind themselves that we're starting to go into a stage where people can confidently make those choices again, and actually empowering line managers to also have those constructive conversations in their team about what's in the best interest of their team as well as the business as a whole. But as we talk about the benefits of hybrid working, I've also got some of the work that we've also done is going deep into the behavioural science on this, and also remember the benefits of also face-to-face communications and how those effective meeting rooms and all these other things can actually lend itself to those elements as well. Because also in the spirit of inclusion, it can seem that some of the messages and the benefits and the importance of face-to-face contact for well-being, aside from anything else, can be lost. And so within that, just kind of making sure that the staff have the full remit and spectrum of different ways to connect, and utilising technology to support those interactions in whatever way is best for them.
Brilliant. I think, Florian, your hand's up as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted basically to echo what Luke already said. Know your user, respect the user, as we call it at Google, basically. Regularly collect the feedback, know what's happening. And sometimes things might even happen that we are talking about visually impaired person. Maybe that's a long-term thing, but there might be limitations for a short period. You have a broken arm. What are you doing? So these things might come in as well. So regular feedback to know how to how to react. That's I would say that's the core. And one thing that we have learned from Google side during the pandemic, the requirements change a bit. Like this, it was mentioned before, like this companion mode. All of us are now meeting virtually. What if some are on site and some are meeting virtually? Are those meeting or joining online kind of left behind because they don't hear, that they don't get the message from the people working on site? That's also non-inclusion. So it goes way beyond the kind of classical, we deal with disabilities. There are even disabilities because you are not on site. So know your users, know how they are working. That's kind of the main part from my perspective.
Thanks, Ryan. That's a great point, I guess, because if you imagine that certain users of the organization might be more likely to be the people working from home and joining remote hybrid meetings remotely, if you have that power dynamics, then it manifests in organization level inequities in how people experience work. So it's a great point and a very useful segue as well, I think, to one of the questions from the chat from Vanessa Wilson in terms of the technology that, in particular for the three speakers from the technology companies, what are you looking at to support staff in hybrid meetings? And potentially, could I cheekily add on a little bit to that question? If there's anything that you can talk about that might be coming up in the future that isn't out yet, technologies on the horizon, or things that, for ourselves from local government that we might not know about coming up, but might be really interesting to hear about as well. Back to you, Florian.
Okay, we'll take it first. So basically what we are doing at the moment is, first of all, we introduced this kind of companion mode as well. So that you have your device, whatever that is, smartphone, tablet, a PC, with you to join a meeting, like on site in a meeting room where you see the people at the screen and you're just having your device because you need the transcription to understand what people are talking about, to see better, to magnify things on your local device. That's what we call companion mode. That's kind of a natural choice. When you join a Google Meet, you see that. Are you joining in a full version or are you joining in companion mode? That's one thing. And what we also introduced is, like, we point out if people are working on site or remotely. If you respond to a Google Calendar invitation, you now responding, I'm joining virtually, I'm joining on site, or I'm joining from somewhere else. Basically, you have the feedback coming, and you see the meeting organizers and everyone else sees where the people are, so they can plan ahead. So that is a bit more. That is one part of inclusion, but to echo Suzanne, obviously you need to do something about it. The leadership is important in that part, so you really need to act upon it. Everything else is just a tool.
Thanks, Florian. And then Sean. Sean, you may be on mute. It wouldn't be a webinar without saying that one.
Yes, I get the bingo card. I was going to say, I agree with Florian, right? You have practice comes first, tools then sort of aid the practice. I threw in some resources into the chat there, including a hybrid guide to meetings, which includes some things about how to set up rooms, which was asked by Vanessa, things like where to put speakers and microphones compared to people, those sorts of things. But also this CHARMS framework that we've got. It's a little mnemonic you can use to remember to think about how you're going to deal with chat, hand raising, agenda recording, moderators, and support for people, which we use as a sticker on all our meeting rooms. And it just helps people remember what sort of things should they think about when they're running these meetings, for including the remote people in a hybrid meeting as well as the people in the room. A sneak peek of stuff coming ahead at our Microsoft Research Summit this year, we actually demoed this new meeting concept called Perspective Mode. And what this does is it allows people who are in a hybrid meeting, so whether they're remote or whether they're in the local room. We segment everybody's video out, and put them all together into a room with a virtual table, and they can all sit around the table, which has the same order that it would have in real life. And what that means is that everybody gets a consistency to the table just like they do in real life, but also a unique view of everyone else that's consistent with everyone else's. So Fred is always to the left of Gina, for example. And what that means is you get to use natural cues for turn taking, like looking at people. You get to use natural ordering cues, like just going around the table without a facilitator having to say, oh, Fred, it's your turn next. Oh, Gina, it's your turn next. Oh, Bill, it's your turn next. So this perspective mode, you know, video conferencing is weird. It's almost 100 years old, depending on the way you want to count, if you can consider some of the earliest video telephony systems. And it's really hard to get right. And what's interesting is that the look of the video system hasn't changed that much in all that time. And so perspective mode is, oddly enough, one of the few sort of new ways of actually creating, instead of a one-size-fits-all meeting view, a view for you that fits with everybody else's view. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Sean. And now to you, Adanna.
Am I off mute? Yes. Yeah, you know, I talked about a number of features in my presentation, and you know, I could go over those, but if I add to that, just thinking about myself, you know, as I'm working from home, how many of you have had someone, a child, dog barking with built-in noise suppression, right? That reduces that background noise, tapping away. You might, you know, I remember actually when kids we were doing the homeschooling, and you know, you're in a small space. You are at home. You're trying to be professional, stay focused in your meeting, and maybe you've got your child behind you asking you a question. Well, the noise suppression was really enabling that inclusivity, because no one was hearing anything unless they, of course, pop their head out. So there's that sort of feature. There's focus mode. Focus mode we added as well, just to ensure that, and I mean, this plays well into more of the school's environment and education spaces or training, where you want your attendees to focus only on either the individual that's speaking, the lecturer, whoever it might be, and you turn off video for everyone else, and therefore, you know, the attendees are only focusing on those participants that you need them to focus on, as well as our room solutions. We do offer a room-based Zoom room solution, and there we've thought about that return to the office. You know, the pandemic has taught us many things, one of which is trying to be to have a touch-free environment and not to touch on too many surfaces. And how do you keep all these things clean? You don't want to keep spraying electronic devices. It's probably not the best thing to do. So what we thought about is, how can you carry on using your own devices in this kind of environment? Bring in your own mobile phone, bring in your own laptop, use that as the remote control to drive that room-based meeting for the better audio experience, for the better collaborative session that you're trying to have. So yeah, I'll leave it there, but you know, hopefully we'll be able to share some additional resources to give you more information around that.
For sure, thank you, Dan. And yes, I've in my guides for the future workplace, I've been linking almost all the resources that people have been speaking about from the companies are present in so many of these resources, and we'll be sure to include them in the write-up blog as well. The last question I suppose I have for everyone, very short answers if possible. What's your vision for what the future of work could look like? And if you could just sort of be, 2 or 3 sentences, that would be fantastic. Adanna? Or is your hand up for the previous question?
Sorry, that was my hand up for the previous question, but I just missed that question you asked there. Sorry.
No, sure. It was just my questions for everyone, what their vision is for what the future of work might look like.
Wow, that's a great question there, Sam.
What would you like it to look like?
I have really embraced the hybrid work model, because prior to the pandemic, I actually worked more in the office. And, you know, I think for me, if this could be the utopia, it works because you get the quality of life, the work-life balance. And that has been an important point for everybody pre-pandemic. You know, we were all very busy, very much focused on work and not so much, you know, struggling to add the family into that dynamic. I think what we've seen now is that slight shift and change, and everyone feels included, family, work, and you're more productive. So for me, this hybrid work environment, for it to extend as much as it possibly can into all workspaces will be amazing.
Brilliant. Luke?
I think we're going to head for 3-speed sort of environment. There'll be organisations that are comfortable being fully remote and just get on with working in a you know, an async way and are really comfortable with it, and that's just how their business model is, and they have no learning to do, and they'll fly off into the distance. There'll be progressive organisations that embrace kind of the opportunities and the change that's needed, and they will be the places that are able to attract good talent and thrive, and their business models will probably change as a result of the change they're going to have to make around their ways of working. And then there'll be the people who don't change, and I think that will be extremely tiring and difficult, and it will look a lot like the last 2 years where everybody was struggling to adapt and learn, but forever. And I think those all, you know, there's going to be a lot of organisations that, if they don't choose to embrace this and really learn how they, you know, how they need to change, then they're going to get stuck, and it's going to be incredibly challenging for them to retain staff and to kind of enjoy work, I think.
Right. Well, hopefully not in London. Sean? Once again, Sean, I'm afraid you're on mute.
Damn it. I agree with both the previous speakers. Thinking sort of, there's lots of talk right now about an immersive VR future of work where we strap on a headset and just disappear into some virtual world and leave the physical world behind. We don't really believe that at MSR. You know, matter matters. There's always going to be a physical, visceral sense of self and place that really matter, because self, you know, you matter, the embodied you matters, and your place matters, right? It has history, it has all sorts of things. And so what we're thinking about is, yes, we do want to design an immersive future where you can be inside your content, if you like, flipping it from, at the moment you're looking at your content. An immersive future is where you're inside your content in a sense, but there has to be a blended physical and digital reality, and it has to be able to blend from, you know, a simple device like a phone through to a head-mounted device, and anybody on any device that they've got with any bandwidth level they've got, whether they're at home, whether they're at work, needs to be able to join, you know, with equity across those devices. It doesn't mean equality here, doesn't mean everything exactly the same. It means the right thing on the right device at the right time. That's equity. And so that's what we really strongly believe in, a blend of physical digital realities on any sort of device.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Is there anything, Susan or Florian, you wanted to add?
I could.
Florian?
Maybe just a quick summary, because we have 3 pillars that we are focusing on this workspace collaboration side, and mainly the most important part is really about well-being. What was previously said, we want people work from everywhere. Basically, our solution is built that way that it allows to work from anywhere. But well-being, keeping it down to a certain level and you shut down your work and you stop working at some point. That's really important. So that's a core pillar of what we are focusing on. Also, we want to make people more productive in whatever they do. There will be a lot of features coming in, like related to accessibility as well, like auto generation of meeting transcriptions, etc. This will have people people should have more impact in what they are doing, but well-being is really important, especially in this hybrid working world.
Thanks, Florian. And Susan, the final word to you.
No, just the key thing for me is around empowering leadership to make decisions that are in the best interest of their teams, which in this new world will most likely be multidisciplinary and working with a greater span of influence than we've seen before. So yeah, I'll keep it short because I'm conscious of time.
No, thank you. It's, I think, a very important point. I just want to say thank you very much to all of our panelists for joining. I know we've gone a couple of minutes over, but the quality of insights, I think, means that we can all forgive ourselves for that. I've really, really enjoyed listening to everyone and what they've had to say, and it's made me optimistic for what the future of work might look like. I just want to quickly share one slide which relates to the next step in this work for LOTI. So you've seen we've been sharing guides. The next step is we are writing a short report, basically contextualizing what the future of work might look like in London, building on some of the recommendations and the ideas that have come up in the guides and from the conversations I've had. What we want to do is feature perspectives and insights from people who have experienced the workplace differently, either during remote work or in hybrid working. So if that is anyone you know, or indeed yourselves, if you're joining us, then I'd love to hear from you. You have my email address in that slide. We'd love to feature you and help complement our report and the recommendations that we can make to our members. Otherwise, I just want to thank the panelists again for their time and to thank everyone for joining us. And I wish you all a lovely afternoon.